In the distance, I can hear the sound of many horse hooves hitting the ground as riders return from a 2-hour trail ride at Croatoan Frontier Farm. I think about my life here and the place I left behind. My name is Croatoan. I am a Mustang from Corolla, North Carolina's Sandhorse Beach.
Well, my name's Steve Edwards. I'm the executive director here of Croatoan Frontier Farms, and Mill Swamp Indian Horses is part of that. And this is where Croatoan spent all of his last years.
I remember the words of my ancestors. My grandparents told me stories of survival and escape. My kin were forced to swim ashore.
They've been here, we believe, for nearly 500 years now. They came over with the would-be colonists, for the most part, from Spain, either through shipwrecks, which has been noted, or safely, because it's not absolute that we know either way, and they were definitely left behind.
Some thought that explorers had abandoned the colony, leaving behind livestock, including horses that had belonged to Spanish kings.
They thrived at great numbers for many years.
While I still lived on the beautiful beaches of Corolla, I would hear the humans speak of a time when 5,000 horses roamed the entire stretch of the Outer Banks from Manteo to Corolla.
It was documented in 1928 by the National Geographic Society that there were at least 5,000 to 6,000 of our horses roaming the entire Outer Banks.
We would race over the largest mountain-like sand dune, now called Jockey's Ridge.
Are definitely social animals. They live in family groups, so we have the herd here, but then broken down within that herd we have family groups that we call harems, and within that harem you'll have a dominant stallion, a dominant mare, several other mares, maybe some offspring. So they are very social. They form bonds, and the stallions will fight with each other over mares. Mares will shift back and forth between harems. So there's a lot of social dynamics that are at play with the herd.
We use them for transportation, and it was kind of like therapy for us also. And of course, our lodging area and also our hunting area went all the way down to the Albemarle Sound.
If your family lived in the southeastern part of the country, this is what they rode. This is what they plowed with. This is what took them everywhere they went. These colonial Spanish horses. And we have Choctaws here, and Marsh Tackies from South Carolina, another strain of these Spanish horses. And they're nearly gone. And we don't really understand, as we should, how they fit in historically. And we don't have a right for our generation to be the one to allow them to go extinct. These horses came here nearly 100 years before white people came to Jamestown.
But soon, roads would be paved and vacation retreats built on prime waterfront property. We were made to coexist with cars, people, and beach houses.
The worst problem that the horses have with people is that the people are there. And there are so few of these horses left.
Well, we have a local ordinance that actually helps us a great deal. They must stay away. All of us are supposed to stay away at least 50 feet, which we sort of translate to at least 5 car lengths when people don't understand what 50 feet is. And then not to feed, because their diet is entirely off the land, unlike domestic horses. Innocently, people come here thinking, well, I'll just give them an apple or a carrot, and that can cause them to colic and be fatal. So that ordinance does help us.
And it does make a huge problem when the horses get overexposed to people, lose their fear. It becomes dangerous to the horses because they're interacting with people that don't understand horses, and very often everybody wants to give what they call a treat. And so many of these treats are poisons. These horses did not evolve to eat sugar. And they can get incredibly ill and die from what people consider to be a treat. The other thing is when they lose any type of standoffishness from people, they become dangerous for people. And they become much more susceptible to being accidentally injured by people. The ones that are hit by automobiles are ones that have become at least habitualized enough so that they don't turn and run at the mere smell of a human. And yes, that is a problem.
It really is unsafe in all cases, unless that selfie is that distance where you're up with your stick and that horse is 50 feet behind you. It can be done as a selfie then. All else can be actually dangerous.
It's dangerous for the horses and for people. The horses can be very aggressive, sometimes not even intentionally aggressive, but they're large animals and they're wild animals. And they can also become what we call habituated, which means that they seek out human interaction. They know that people will feed them, they know that people will scratch them, whatever. And that is one of the reasons that we would have to take a horse off the beach, because it can become so dangerous for both the horse and the people. And that's a really heartbreaking thing to have to do, to remove a perfectly healthy horse just because people have interfered with it being wild. So we really don't ever want to have to do that, and that's probably the biggest reason we would ask people to not interfere with the horses, to watch them from a distance.
With all the construction going on, you have this confinement, and companies and industry is constantly moving in on their area. The same thing happened to Native people in the state of Virginia, okay? They were confined to a reservation, and as more colonials came and they bought up more land, the areas got smaller and smaller and smaller, and what happened, Native people reverted to drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. So again, it's important that the wild mustangs be saved, that they not be allowed to go extinct, and that their domain stays the way it is, and that they're not encroached upon. This is what I was looking for, encroachment. They're being encroached upon.
Then in 1938, the government put a bounty on them, which was probably the beginning to their lessening in number. And with man becoming more attracted to the Outer Banks and spending more time here, more groups of people came, and it seems to have driven both factions of this strain of colonial Spanish Mustangs to the most opposite sides of the farther sides of the Outer Banks. And so now there's just these two herds, one existing in Shackelford Banks, that having federal legislation and the protection of that legislation, and they are managed by the National Park Service, and are heard here up above the proper of Corolla. And we, as the Corolla Wild Horse Fund, is their only protection, formal protection, let's say.
We were pushed out of the land we had grown to love. I longed for my freedom. I tried many times to lead my harem across the Croatoan Sound, searching for a home for my mares and my foals. But it was too dangerous. The Corolla Wild Horse Fund staff removed me from the beach, from my home and harem. I didn't understand at first that it was done for the safety of the herd. But once a horse is removed, we cannot be brought back at the risk of spreading disease.
So one of the biggest issues that we face with genetic diversity in the herd is that there is only one maternal line. And so ideally we would have more than one maternal line, and we would see far fewer birth defects, genetic defects, things like that.
When we talk about inbreeding, people think about disabilities and foals being born with health problems. The even bigger problem is already happening, and that's sterility. Complete genetic collapse. It takes a herd of at least 120 horses to maintain genetic viability. And as long as those numbers are below that, every year that the numbers are below that, it gets that much more difficult for the horses to have a future.
And that is where the introduction of horses from Shackelford would be very, very helpful to us. They have had DNA testing done with those horses, just like they've done with the horses here in Corolla, and we know that they are the same strain of colonial Spanish Mustang, the Banker strain. And by bringing some of those mares from Shackelford over here to Corolla, that would help diversify the genetics in the herd.
Not only are there Spanish Mustangs here at Corolla and Shackelford, but they may very well be the purest bands of colonial Spanish horses anywhere in America. These horses don't even exist in Spain anymore. They're gone in Europe. And they are nearly gone here.
Smithfield, Virginia. The Guantley Frontier Farm became my new home. Steve Edwards and the Corolla Wild Horse Fund gave me and many others a new chance to live as healthy wild Mustangs. We live outside in our natural habitat, grazing, running, and playing together. We are the largest Mustang herd on the East Coast. I am not lonely. Sadly, as time goes by, I'm sure that many horses will join our herd. But the wonderful thing is that all of these castaway Mustangs were saved and given a new life by Steve Edwards, using natural horsemanship techniques. In time, these Mustangs can become trail riding horses, and many have even won awards. I am proud to have won a Buckaroo Award in 2009 for my trail riding with one of Steve's youngest riders, Sarah Lynn Crapplewhite. Sarah is amazing. She looks like a warrior when she practices her archery from horseback.
The herd size right now is between 80 and 100. We had previously been doing aerial counts once a year. The last time we went up was in September of 2016, and it was right after a tropical storm. And so it was very, very flooded up in the area. The horses were very displaced. And there was also still a lot of foliage on the trees. It was very green, so it was difficult to see. We counted 67 horses, but we are very confident that there are more than that up there. So we are going to start doing aerial counts now 4 times a year, so we'll get a better idea of where the horses are each season and where they're grazing and how they're moving throughout the habitat on a yearly basis.
And we have started the off-site breeding program that we hope will be able to keep the Corollas from going extinct.
In the past couple years, we have been seeing bursts of 5, 6, 7 foals a year. So we've had one this year already, and we're keeping an eye out for any others that we might have.
I fear that the walls will continue to close in around my fellow horses of kings as more and more land on Corolla Horse Beach is purchased.
I want to thank Kay for the outstanding job that she's doing and for this book that she wrote. And I know the book has gotten a lot of reviews, and hopefully people will come on board and take a serious concern about saving the wild Mustangs. That's very important that we save the wild Mustangs. Okay, we don't want them to be extinct, and that again that their area stays the way it is, so they have good grazing land, etc., and they still be allowed to swim the Outer Banks as they are.
Croatoan was a very special horse. He was so gentle, so kind-hearted, so much wanted to have contact with people, so curious. And if one day we are able to produce enough of these horses domestically so that we can just breathe a sigh of relief and say, no, they're safe, they can't go extinct now. A big part of that is going to be because of the contribution that he made to the program.
I am now retired, and I know I've truly made my mark on this world. I crossed the barrier befriending humans after my capture. I've taught many the ways of the past, and I'm proud that I continue the noble colonial Spanish Mustang legacy. I, Croatoan, wants to be remembered with honor, and for the horses of kings to always roam free. In our home, Corolla, North Carolina.
All right, we'll do Circle Be Unbroken first.
Yeah.
Good job.